This lecture is on the subject and the minister of the sacrament of the Eucharist. It's a very brief introduction to these concepts, which we will look at in greater detail in the days to come. First of all, the subject of the Eucharist. The subject of the Eucharist is also called the communicant because it is the person who receives communion during the communion rite of Mass. The communicant is a baptized Catholic, so someone who has received baptism either in the Catholic Church or has been baptized in another tradition and has professed their faith in the Catholic Church. That person also must be in a state of grace. A state of grace is that state in which there is no mortal sin on the soul. Also, there are certain dispositions of the communicant for the Eucharist. They first must of all believe in the real presence of Christ, that is, in transubstantiation, that the host and the chalice they are about to partake in actually contains the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. Furthermore, they must intend by this action to receive Christ in the Eucharist. They can't just be doing something for the sake of habit or just doing what everyone else is doing. They must go with the full intention of receiving Christ in this sacrament. Now, as far as receiving the sacrament, there's actually further requirements. First of all, every baptized Catholic has a requirement of receiving the Eucharist at least once a year during the Easter season. Now, the Easter season is not just Easter Sunday. The Easter season is actually several weeks after Easter, leading all the way up to the celebration of Pentecost. So there's several weeks in which this minimum can be met. There's a maximum of receiving the Eucharist twice in a day, so no more than twice. The failure to meet this minimum of once a year during the Easter season is itself a grave sin. Now, along with that, there's requirements to attending Mass. First of all, there's a minimum. Every Catholic must attend Mass on Sundays and on holy days of obligation, which do not fall on Sundays. So, first of all, the Saturday Vigil Mass, which usually takes place sometime after 4 p.m. on Saturday, is actually a Sunday Mass. So that would fulfill your Sunday obligation. Attending Mass any other day of the week, while good and efficacious, is not meeting of the Sunday obligation. However, there are holy days of obligation, like major feast days such as Christmas or other Marian feast days that are days of obligation that do not always fall on a Sunday, that oftentimes are on a certain date and therefore would fall during the week. We must attend Mass on those days as well, in addition to Sundays. There is no maximum of masses that we can attend in a given day or in a given year. There is simply a maximum of receiving the Eucharist twice in a day. Any failure to meet the minimum of attending Mass every Sunday and holy days of obligation, the failure to meet that intentionally is itself a grave sin. And the minister of the Eucharist. So only a priest or a bishop can confect the Eucharist. That is, only they can celebrate the Mass and actually pray the prayers which consecrate the bread and wine to become the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. Now, the ordinary minister and the extraordinary minister of communion or the Eucharist actually only refers to those individuals who can distribute the Eucharist. So the ordinary minister of the sacrament of the Eucharist is the bishop, the priest, and the deacon. It is they who ordinarily distribute the Eucharist to those present receiving, or to the communicants. The extraordinary minister of Holy Communion is any Catholic layperson who's been fully initiated and trained and commissioned to distribute the Eucharist. And that is all they can do. They can only distribute the Eucharist. They cannot do anything else.